What do you need to know about potential cloud cover and the coming total solar eclipse? I'm meteorologist Don Paul. Welcome back to my podcast, Don Paul's Bits o' Blather on weather, climate, and this time around, cloud climatology. Most of you have heard by now that during the afternoon of April 8th, a strip of the United States, including my town here, Buffalo, will undergo total eclipse coverage. And there is the potential in many locations for some interference from cloud cover. I was pleased to be one of the two science people that the Washington Post went to in an article they published a few days ago on cloud climatology and the eclipse. By the way, I made that article non paywall, it's for free on my Facebook page, Don Paul, or on my Twitter page. No, I still refuse to call it X. And it's got all the basics, but here are some simple principles. Sometimes there is overdone pessimism for some locations, including for Buffalo, about, oh, we're cloudy at that time of the year so often, it's just not that high a chance of good viewing conditions. That is overstated. Yes, we could have unfortunate conditions on that day, but last April 8th, had the eclipse been on that April 8th, we had perfect conditions here in Western New York, virtually total clear skies preceding what would have been a spectacular view. The cloud climatology becomes a little more favorable even in cloudier parts of the Great Lakes come April 8th than the cloud climatology in, say, early February. Now, it happens here in Buffalo on 3 days in a row in early February. We started the day with low clouds and fog, and in our forecast, respectively, we were projecting a breakup of those low stratus clouds by or during the afternoon. But that's an imprecise call. If you have a very weak and stagnant air pattern in place and a temperature inversion locking in those low clouds and moisture in the morning, it's very hard at 7 in the morning to say what hour the sun is just going to come through finally. But all three of those days, in early February with less favorable cloud climatology because the angle of the sun is lower in the sky in early February than it will be on April 8th. Even with those less favorable climatological conditions, we ended up with what would have been good viewing conditions at the time of the total eclipse had it been on February 3rd, 4th, or 5th. So even a gray start to the day with a very imprecise and fuzzy worded forecast the day before doesn't mean all is lost. That's taking a near worst case scenario that turns out okay. You also can have a thinner overcast made largely of ice crystal clouds high in the atmosphere, which will allow plenty of sunshine through. Now, with that kind of visible sun, there may be some interference with viewing the at the edge of the corona, the solar prominences, even with your glasses, which are an absolute must, except during the precise time of the totality. Otherwise, you risk permanent damage to your eyes from ultraviolet radiation. Um, but you'd still have, even with a thin overcast, a great view of the disk of the moon crossing the sun. In other words, it would still look spectacular. More spectacular if you have sunny skies and clear skies, because then you would also get a more dramatic temperature drop off, which can have some really dramatic impact in just a moment or two. You can drop 10 to 15 degrees. That cool air is heavy and will flow along the ground as a gusty, almost like a cold gust, and dramatic changes in some animal behavior. Birds think it's nighttime. The tweeting can stop or start, depending on what kind of bird it is. And the effects would be less spectacular if you had sunshine somewhat dimly visible through a thin overcast, but you'd still notice the cooling, just not as much as if you went from total sun to total eclipse. So there are these in between states which will still give you spectacle and an event you will never forget. And you better not, because there isn't going to be another one in this part of the country until 2124. So better not miss this one, gang. And by the way, the pessimism I see in some articles, some of it is even based on what seems to be good climatology, but I just want you to know the climatology of cloud cover does not account very well for a partial cloud cover with not total opacity. That's the thing. Opacity. How dense is the cloud cover and how much coverage is there? You can have 3/10 cloud cover, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10. These in between states still can allow you and afford you great opportunities for safely viewing the eclipse. The safety glasses are a must. I actually had someone ask me on Facebook, is that just a consumer ripoff thing? No, sunglasses will not do the trick. And the only time you can take those safety glasses off is during the precise time of totality, not when it's nearly total, not when it just finished being total, but only during totality. No, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, but any doctor can tell you that. And there's plenty of good online information. Again, you can find more on this topic in the Washington Post particle, in which or particle article. I was in there for a lot more than a particle, and I'm very privileged to be in the article. It's on my Facebook page, Pay Free, and also on my Twitter page, Pay Free. The Washington Post has the best weather page of any newspaper in the United States, the Capital Weather Gang, and it's always a privilege to help them out a little. So thanks for listening, and please share, please follow, and I'll be back with a meteorological podcast episode in the next day or two. Got to catch up on those models, gang. I've been on the West Coast for a week, and you know how you're out of whack when you first come back. At least I haven't lost touch with the coming and spectacular total eclipse.